Mr. McGill, would you like to review agenda items and commission questions and all the the good stuff?
Madam President, I don't know how many questions we'll have. We have a very light agenda this evening, but a very important agenda. We will have a commendation for an Eagle Scout. We will have recognition for Chief Sahaya, who is retiring after 25 years of service to the municipality. So it should be a very nice recognition. And then finally, from a true agenda item standpoint, we will have the appointment of junior commissioners for the fall 2024 and spring of 2025. That is what we have.
Great. Okay. Mr. Deezerat,
Sure,
it's your show.
on the clock.
Mhm.
All right.
Endorsement for your moving to Mount Lebanon.
I'll do a commercial.
Yes.
So I'm here tonight to talk about a couple culverts that carry large bodies of water in the municipality. The first being the Public Works culvert. I'm just calling out the GIS here just briefly to give you an idea of the extent of the inspection that we recently completed. The blue lines on here represent actual storm lines. And actually, the big pipe that we're talking about tonight actually passes through the Public Works yard about 1,500 feet, comes down and discharges down below the firing range into an open water course. This pipe was constructed over time to carry all the watershed that leads all the way up to Washington Road here. It's a 96-inch diameter culvert. And it's been repaired over time with some various methods of repair. But we really got into checking this culvert out when the Public Works project started. We said, hey, we better get in and make sure that this pipe is in good condition. And right around that same time that work started, there were some horrific storms that sort of ripped up some of the pipe inside. It's a corrugated metal pipe. Has a design life of about 30 to 50 years. It was put in different pieces. There's some concrete pipe in here also that I'll talk about briefly. But in general, it was in good condition the first time we saw it. Then we got in there and the storm took aim at it and did some ripping up of it. And we've been in since, been doing repairs. We did repairs in 2016, 18, 19, 20, and 21. And that really got us in pretty good condition, but there's some nagging things that still left to be done on this pipe. Just to give you an idea, the pipe's about 1,547 feet long. The value of that asset is about $2.3 million in total to rebuild something like that. So we've been rebuilding it from the inside out. And that does a couple things. It saves on our restoration, and it also is a cost-effective way, because what happens is pipe usually deteriorates on the bottom because it rusts.
Right.
And if you can shore yourself up from sort of 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, you can really extend the length of the pipe. So you really don't have to do full replacement inside. Some places we do, depending upon where the loading is on the pipe. But in a lot of cases, you can just do the invert repairs. So that's the first pipe that we're going to talk about. And then just briefly, while I have the GIS opened up, the second pipe we're going to talk about is located over on Iroquois Drive. This is another about a 200-foot length pipe, and believe it or not, it's the same size. It's an 8-foot diameter corrugated metal pipe that's in deteriorating condition, but it's still okay. We just keep an eye on it. We are expecting to do some work on here in a few years, and we would recommend that. But I'll talk about both of them. So I'm going to stop this one and then share the PowerPoint.
We've talked many times about pipelining for smaller pipes. Is this just way too big to try and, line the pipe from the inside? Is that only, let's say, good for, let's say, a 6-inch pipe rather than pipe of this size?
No, we are actually lining this pipe.
Just the full,
But we're lining it with concrete. We're rebuilding a pipe inside the pipe with reinforcement. So you go inside and you anchor reinforcement inside the corrugated metal pipe.
right?
And then you actually come in with shotcrete and you put a layer of cementatious product, it's probably about 3 to 4 inches in depth
Yeah.
that you put on that and you trowel that and you create a new pipe within the pipe.
We create.
So really the corrugated pipe was just acting as really as a form of
Okay.
concrete.
Okay.
And it's the methods that they use now and the way they do it, it's definitely, you know, I've done ones as big, much bigger than 96. You know, like huge ones. It's a good cost-effective way to do it.
Right.
So we talked about the pipe. This is just a screenshot of the inside of where a pipe is projecting into this corrugated metal pipe. This gives you an idea of the material. I said it's a 1,500-foot pipe. We've done repairs since for 5 years. We did some significant repairs in there, and we spent about $750,000 on the work so far. And we're projecting based upon the most recent inspection, we're recommending the budget from the stormwater fund about another $300,000 when funds are available to do this, hopefully next year. And this was one of the reasons, this is one of the big pipes that we recommended, along with other things that we run into, why the stormwater fee is so important to maintaining these assets. You don't know you need them until you need them. So this gives you an idea of the process here. So this is some invert lining where you can see that they put the reinforcement in the pipe from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And then this is not a very good picture, the first one, but the second one is you can see the cementatious product in there. So this is from 3 years ago, the middle slide, and then this is the current slide. So it looks really good. It's functioning well, and we're happy with the results.
What's the life of the cementation?
I mean, concrete's 50 years.
Yeah.
You know,
Although water does erode
it starts to scour it in the
Yeah.
grit.
Right.
And stuff starts to weigh on it. So that's part of what we're seeing in the pipe. So right now, that estimate of $300,000 worth of repairs that were recommended for budgeting, we have a detailed report that we gave to Rudy, and I believe the commission was copied on. But it sort of goes station by station in the pipe and outlines what needs to be done. So we have some repair to some significantly damaged pipe at about $50,000. We do have some full diameter work that needs to be done at $83,000. Medium priority, this is an invert length of 375 feet. That's the 5 to 7 o'clock. And then we have some damaged RCP where the bottom of the RCP is actually being worn away and scoured away. That actually needs to be handled. It can be handled in the same way with the gunite lining. And then on the lower priority, there's some areas that we would like to do some preventative work. So depending upon budget, we can do some or all of this. So we have it broken down into different pieces.
And
This gives you an idea of a plan view of that pipe. We have it all stationed off and we know where it is. And we identify where the repairs need to be done. These are the public works facilities, as you can see through here. So the pipe continues on the next page, it comes all the way down and discharges, like I said, right below the firing range.
And your budget estimates all add up to that total of 313.
Correct. So that's that culvert. This is the second one. This is Iroquois. And you can start to see this again. We've done nothing to this pipe. This just came to our attention a few years back and we started keeping an eye on it. Again, it's a 96-inch pipe. As you can see, it's significantly rusted.
yeah,
We did get a quote on invert repairs, some full diameter repairs, and some grouting on this at $340,000.
okay,
We also looked at slip lining as a possible way where they actually come in and slip a new pipe inside the old pipe. And you gain, because the corrugated metal pipe capacity is all based upon the friction value of the pipe. So when you put a smooth line pipe in, you obviously create more capacity than a rough line pipe. So even though we might be shrinking the diameter by slip lining or gunite process,
That's right.
we still have the same capacity. So DEP approves us going that way. And these pipes are all under the jurisdiction of the DEP too, because they're large diameter of over a 1 square mile watershed.
And when we go to the smooth line pipe, do you increase the velocity at all by doing that?
I mean, a little bit, I mean, you have to have, something has to increase to keep it going, yeah, it's a slight improvement on the velocities.
Do you then have to mitigate the outflow? Because you've increased the velocity and you get erosion?
We have erosion protection at these already, we always just check them. You know, at most, we might do some grouting of the riprap that's in front of the, to deal with it, but really, the velocities aren't that significantly increased, they're still relatively very flat pipes. They're probably laid at less than 1% grade, because they're running with the gradient of the stream. So, the only thing that, to point out, just to try to stay on time here with your agenda. This is just another picture of the Iroquois pipe and where the repairs need to be made. The purple is, invert repairs, and then the pink would be full diameter repairs that are recommended. But the one thing that I noticed that I thought with this pipe is that given the cost and its location, unlike the Public Works culvert, we could actually put this project out for multiple options of bidding, because you could replace the pipe by total reconstruction and not really affect it. And still keep the road operational, you would have.
It's down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you would avoid it, so you could go in and totally replace this. So I would recommend when we do ultimately plan to do this work, that we bid it with multiple options. The gunite, we look at a total replacement, and then we look at the slip lining.
Yeah.
And see what comes up
Yeah.
as the most cost effective.
Right, sure.
Just one other question. I'm just more curious more than anything.
Sure.
Why, again, given the topography right beside that, why wouldn't we daylight that stream and move it? Right, again, not that I'm saying there's not a lot of use down there, but yeah, you're at a dead end. It seems like there might be a rework that
Yeah.
removes that need.
I think, Andrew, the genesis of this pipe was when Painter's Run was improved. I believe at one time Iroquois came further, and this was adjusted for Painter's Run. And they made the loop there, and that's a slope embankment that's actually supporting Painter's Run is pretty significant
It's a
there.
very steep slope.
Yeah, very.
That's,
So this is.
that's more what the purpose of the pipe was for.
So this is, because the state, or is it Painter's Run, or is that,
It's the county, I believe.
yeah, it's the.
Yeah, the county
It's
built. the road.
Wilkinson.
Mhm,
Yeah,
yes.
Connor
Yeah, that's going
Road.
to sit and then
Connor,
that steep
yeah.
hillside there
Yeah.
going down, but then there's
Yeah.
You daylight
Yeah,
it,
there-
yeah, right.
these, there are
Got
topographic
it.
lines on there.
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
kind of see
I
that.
got you.
What is that above? Or something?
No,
Well,
no.
there's a
They're in there.
outlet, well, there's
Yeah.
a steep hillside, but if you look at on the upper right-hand corner of the
There's a
picture,
little
Yeah.
park.
that's Iroquois Park.
Yeah.
The tennis courts are right there in
Right.
the corner.
But as you come closer to the road, I mean, it's
Oh, yeah, it is,
it's
the hill.
really
Yeah.
steep.
It's a
There's
steep
not
hillside,
even
but-
room for a sidewalk.
there's a flight of steps here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a little flight of steps here that goes up to.
You can see it when you go in the Galleria garage.
So that's the story. I think, if there's any questions, Keith has asked me to give everybody an update on these. These are pretty significant assets in the community.
Groovy.
I think that,
Is it
well, okay, in the first in this century.
in the city? All right,
I
Thanks,
think in
Dan.
the 1960s.
I know. Oh, I don't know. I date myself. Mr. Donnelly, swim center filtration.
Thank you.
Hey, I do want you to know that I was looking on social media last night, scrolling along, and there was a comment about the Avonworth pool being closed because of filtration problems off and on all summer. So we're not the only ones.
Well, my sympathies to the people at Avonworth.
Avonworth, right? I know,
Yeah, it's a problem no one wants to have.
we're not the only ones.
But I'm happy to report, since our last meeting, or at least over the last month, there have been no further closures at the pool.
Good job.
The water is very clear and inviting. Attendance has been relatively light, but we've had several 700+ days, all the way up to 1,000+. So the mitigation efforts that we've put in place seem to be working very well, so we will keep at that, and I'm pretty comfortable that our closing for cloudy water days are behind us, at least for the rest of the season.
And you mentioned attendance is relatively light. Do you think that's also a contributing factor, just?
I mean, it doesn't hurt,
Yeah.
but again, 1,000+ in a day is a big day.
Big
That's
day.
a lot of bodies.
Yeah.
But I think just the other steps we've taken will help offset that. I mean, there's limits.
Right.
You know, if we had 2,000 people through the door in a day, I couldn't say, you know, but I'm pretty comfortable with where we are. Plus, at this point in the season, we're approaching the end here.
I was gonna ask you about that. You mentioned August 19th, maybe. Is that still?
Well, that was our projected date since, you know, before we open. We always assume we're gonna make it through until school starts again. We try to stay open longer, but we don't make any promises because we just don't know what kind of staff we're gonna have. This is the youngest staff I think we've had, at least in my memory. So we have many high school students. And then college students go back to school, kids are in band, they're in, you know, cross country or football or whatever.
Right.
And, you know, we just lose them. So we are in the process of figuring out what we're gonna be able to do here, if anything, at the end of the season. So we'll keep you posted.
So tentatively, we're still looking at an August 19th close, or?
That is potentially, again, we're gonna try to stretch that if we can. We'd rather not close it, and school starts particularly early this year,
This
so I
year,
think
yeah.
it kind of stings a little bit more, closing that early, but we'll do our best.
We adjust hours when school's back in session.
Right.
So there's a smaller, I'll say, window of time for people to utilize the pool once school's
Which
back.
maybe helps as far as staffing, and just
It
fewer
does.
hours to cover.
It does, like, if, you know, we could shorten up weekend hours as well, we can close parts of the pool, we can close the slides, I mean, we'll go with the minimum, but there is a minimum, and then we're just not able to do it, but we'll see how that goes.
All right.
And then we will still revisit a possible member compensation plan after we close for the season, once we have an accounting of, you know, how many days we closed versus how many days we would be open.
Okay.
So that brings us to filtration replacement. We've narrowed down our list of design professionals who would audit the facility, make recommendations, and provide cost estimates for a filtration system replacement. We have 2 proposals now for that work at around 10,000 each. We have a conference call this Friday, and we'll hopefully have a decision here very soon on who we would like to go with. The fees could vary just if there's additional time or travel. So those are kind of just ballpark estimates for you. But we certainly want to get this process moving. One of the firms has already been on site and gathered some initial information too, so that's helpful. We want to get a better understanding of the replacement costs and what, if anything else, could be done over and above filtration prior to the 2025 season. You know, things we've talked about are replacing the pool floor, leveling gutters, adding a surge tank, and some other things. Anything that could be packaged together and done prior to 2025 that would enhance water clarity, quality is something that we would want to look at. Anything that can't be addressed would be pushed out, you know, and determined when or if we could do it at a later date. We're also working with a pool builder recommended by John Berthold from Pashtic, just to get a second opinion of cost for this project. And just to give us a little additional confidence in whatever numbers we end up with. We want to have a solid number as soon as possible for the commission to consider for filtration replacement. So that is it for the pool, if there's any questions.
You said something about $10,000 each, and I couldn't like that, I missed that, I'm sorry.
So that's for getting a design consultant to do like a facility audit, make recommendations, you know.
As to what to
We
do.
think you need this type of filtration system, we're recommending, you know, this type of chemical controller. And, you know, give you some basics about how you would do it. The design work then I think would be rolled into the project later if the, you know, once you get that budget number.
Right,
If the commission says, yes, we wanna proceed with this, then that firm would likely be involved in the design work as well.
Okay,
To
thank you.
really put
Right,
detail
spec.
to that and put bid specs
That's
together.
great, okay,
Specs.
cool, thank you.
Other questions on pool?
I like that you have a second opinion. With the pool builder, I think that's great.
Yeah, we send him a big packet of pictures and drawings, facility as-built drawings, so we're hoping he can put a number together for a guy that builds pools.
Yeah,
So hopefully
exactly,
we'll see
sure.
what that's like, and then we'll have to add some things to that too. There'll be some architectural work that has to be undertaken. They're not gonna just bring the type of filtration that I think we're gonna get recommended to us is not gonna come through a standard door. We're gonna have to probably come through a block wall. So we'll need an architect on board for this as well. So it's not gonna be an inexpensive project.
I can recommend Jimmy Goldman, but now he's probably 90. If you ever ran
I've heard of
across
him.
him. Yeah, I know, he did all
I
of
have.
those. Yeah, exactly. It's a nice guy.
He was involved
Yeah.
in some way when we.
He was one of
Probably
the
was.
proposers in
Yeah.
2014.
Exactly, yep.
He's a good man, but he's very old now, so. He's probably still working.
Want to move on to
Yes, go ahead.
compressors then?
Rink update.
All right. Well, as you know, we've been waiting for crankshafts to be
Mhm.
delivered so that our compressors can be fixed. We were initially told 2 to 3 weeks back in November. That became 9 months with a July delivery date. And we've very recently been informed that the new estimated delivery date is October. The only explanation we really have for this is the manufacturer Vilter was purchased by Copeland Compressors around the time that our parts were ordered. They determined that the molds used to make the crankshafts were destroyed. And they need to make new molds for these crankshafts.
Wow,
A number of other things were looked at and continue to be looked at, like could we machine the existing crankshafts back to spec?
Mhm.
Initially, you know, no machine shop would touch that. ABM, our service provider, is continuing to look at that. I'm not very optimistic about that. Needless to say, it's very disappointing and it's frustrating. Although our insurance has paid for our costs up until this point, you know, we can't delay forever, so we're looking at some other options. I have 2 CoStarz proposals in hand for about 1.5 million each for a complete design and replacement of our refrigeration system. Much of that work, I mean, the majority of that work could be completed while a temp chiller continues to operate, so it
Oh,
wouldn't
that's good
interrupt
news.
our,
Wow.
our services. Yeah, that's critical.
Mhm.
So minimizing that downtime is important, and it also it minimizes the whole, window of, you know, designing and building, rather than bidding that out. The only other option is, of course, to, you know, put bid specs together and go out for bid. That's just gonna be a little more time consuming and you don't know what you're gonna get when you're done.
So with a new chiller system, and a lot of things have become more efficient energy wise. Is that an expectation with this?
I think it would be more energy efficient, yes. We have not specifically studied that aspect, but,
Right,
you know, we
just-
could probe into that a little bit further. But I would expect it to be.
So David, you said the 2 proposals are both through CoStarz. So they would have been through a public bid process.
Right.
Do we know, and I'm assuming that we do, that those two proposals would be a fit for our base center?
Yeah, we think that they would, and they're also, I should point out, they're both pretty similar, so. I think that gives us a little added layer of comfort with them. They would both utilize the same chiller manufacturer who's more of a local provider. So, you know, that could offer some advantages. So, yeah, we're pretty comfortable that it would get the job done.
Any questions? Eyes popping out of the head?
No, it's just been saying a local provider of chiller, all I could think was Chili Billy, so sorry. He's not available,
Yeah.
for the project.
No questions. Greg, you okay with it?
All good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hey, thanks for the update.
Thanks, David.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Mr. Ward, come on
So
down.
you're early, so you better know card tricks or something.
Yeah.
I used to do card tricks, not anymore.
Juggling?
Can't do that. You started on football talk since it's football season.
Oh, dear. Hmm.
Sports Talk was building up, there's this big trade, you know, and whatever, it turned out the Penguins acquired some, you know, no name winger or something like that, but they were like building up like, yeah, you trade.
All right, thank you. So we're just gonna do a quick update on where we are at with the municipal fleet electrification process. Really, this is just kind of a culmination of the work that's been done over the last year, just analyzing our municipal fleet and how the electrification kind of fits in that process. I think we're gonna start with like a brief background to bring everyone up to speed. Then we're gonna look at some updates within the last couple months, since that update in June. And then we're gonna kind of focus on the next steps, I like to call it, over the next couple of months and kind of how we're gonna proceed on that, so. And feel free to kind of, if you have any questions that are, you know, pressing, just feel free to ask. You don't have to wait till the end on that. So really, again, just to bring everyone up to speed, especially because we have a new commissioner as well. Last year in September, as the comp plan kind of began to formalize, the initiative was kind of taken on by staff to kind of assess potential electrification for our municipal fleet. In October, we began to attend workshops and demos, EVs in action sponsored by Connect and Pittsburgh Region Clean Cities. And then kind of moving forward into the fall, over the winter. In January, the comprehensive plan was formally adopted, kind of laying out the recommendations such as encouraging transition to carbon neutrality, and then also laying out a fleet electrification template, which we're kind of following along by those recommendations. And it's pretty interesting as well, looking at the comp plan. It discusses starting the conversation, which I think we've done over the last couple of months, and then analyzing, the next step after that is analyzing the fleet, which kind of where we're at that point right now. And then moving forward back into February, we participated in, or participating in the Electrify Allegheny program, which pretty much assesses electric vehicles in the municipality, not just fleet electrification, but public charging and things like that. And then in March, we submitted our data to consultants who were working with Duquesne Light. And then they kind of started to digest that data. Into April, we provided an introductory update on municipal fleet discussions. That was, again, very introductory. And then into May, we received preliminary recommendations from the ICF consultants that were working with Duquesne Light. And that's where we kind of moved forward into our June update, which was the second update on the Electrify Allegheny program. And that's kind of where we got the first, I would say, insight look into what we could potentially do in the next couple of months over 10 years from now. So, and really, I think most of what we've been doing over the last month and a half, the beginning of July, end of June. It was presented at the June meeting, for a potential or purchase of a police chief's vehicle.
Right.
And the commission was kind of focusing on allowing the infrastructure to go in place first before purchasing vehicles and kind of putting that infrastructure at the top of the priority list. And especially for take-home vehicles, kind of understanding what the process is going to look like. And what we've done in the next, I would say, the next step of this process is included charging infrastructure projects in the CIP for the 2025 to 2029. And one of those, or I'd say two of those projects are the Public Safety Center and the Public Works facility in 2025. And then there's an Academy lot project proposed in 2026. But then that continues on to my next point is that we actually are doing a joint grant. So the participants of the Electrify Allegheny program are actually doing a joint grant through the U.S. Department of Transportation. It's charging and fueling infrastructure, and it's specifically for public charging. So it wouldn't cover our fleet charging, it would just cover our public charging. So we submitted our sites to be analyzed as the Academy lot. So there could be some potential there for funding, especially with what Duquesne Light's offering as well with their programs. So there's pretty good opportunity there. And then finally, I would say within the last couple of weeks, beginning of August, staff has received a draft report from the Duquesne Light team and the ICF team, which pretty much includes recommendations for the municipal fleet. It lays out kind of what we can do, what are the next steps that we can kind of take. And the next, I like using that term, next steps. I would say the next steps for staff to kind of analyze and digest that data and review based off of what they think would, be best for their departments. And then moving on towards the next couple of months, and this is where we really kind of get into the timeline of the plan, is once staff has the opportunity to review that and again, digest that data, and it is extensive. I think it's a 30-some pages long, but staff will then have the opportunity to ask or meet and then ask with the consultants very detail-oriented specific questions relating to their department use. Public Works with the plow capacity, with police department with their, with onboard computer systems, things like that. So that's kind of what we're planning on for August and September. And then moving into October, we would like to take it to the advisory boards to kind of have our advisory boards play a role, especially the financial management and then resiliency board. Specifically the financial management board, we'd like to kind of have them develop a total cost of ownership to kind of see where the finances will play, especially with capital improvement plans moving forward, and then also working through the budget process. And then within the resiliency board, making sure that the overall fleet electrification plan for the municipality aligns with the comprehensive plan, specifically our recommendation to move to carbon neutrality, and then also the fleet recommendation or the fleet electrification recommendation in the appendix. So I think their input on that will be sought out for a couple months, I should say, just because again, advisory boards meet once a month. So I don't see that happening in one meeting. So it more than likely will be 2 to 3 meetings, potentially October, November, possibly December, but we'll see. Again, these dates for the next upcoming months are going to be very tentative, based off of, staff and then other advisory boards. But moving into the winter, I would say, from kind of December till February is really the drafting of the official municipal fleet electrification plan. I think taking the review comment or the comments and reviews from staff, especially the department heads, input from the advisory boards, and then the feedback that's coming from the consultants from Duquesne Light will definitely help us formulate a pretty solid plan. I think it will most certainly outline the benefits that can potentially come from electric vehicles, and then also putting into consideration like a fire department apparatus replacement plan that's already been formalized from the fire department. We're pretty much going to be doing a replacement plan for each department, for police, parking, recreation, and public works. So I think it's a good foundation we have right now. And once that is formalized and I would say drafted, we can then move towards the first update, I should say, to the commission will potentially be in March. Again, these are tentative dates, to get initial feedback from what the commissioners think. And that, again, that will be that drafted plan. And then going over, again, everything that's been put into over the past months, all the total costs of ownerships, the extensive plans of replacement and what vehicles we can target, such as like low hanging fruit and things like that. And then moving into April, like I said, based on the commission's feedback, we're pretty much gonna finalize the plan. And then make sure it's aligning with our comp plan and other goals, I should say, the climate resolution, making sure because I would say that's one of the foundational documents for what we're doing here. And then potentially in May, we were looking to formally adopt the municipality's fleet electrification plan. And then I think one tidbit in there I should mention as well, that in the memo is for our mechanical and maintenance staff. We're gonna include comprehensive training for them as well, based off of, basic EV technology, safety procedures, providing them with diagnostic tools, and other repair items. So I think that's one way we're gonna look at it, is a pretty comprehensive. I know we just finished up the comprehensive plan, but this is another comprehensive look at what we're doing here. So that is, go ahead, sir.
So for the total cost of ownership piece, something that really will fall more to the financial advisor.
Yes.
To make those, put those numbers together, there'll be a certain set of assumptions that has to be made. It would be really, I think, beneficial to understand sort of the underlying assumptions that go into that total cost of ownership number, whatever it may be. And from a timing standpoint, I understand that you were trying to step this to sort of align with when we would start our budget process in 2025, which I think is helpful. But I think we also all understand that this is sort of a projected timeline at this point as we move through the process. Depending on what happens or what doesn't happen or what other things come into play, there could be adjustments to this as we move.
Of course, like I mentioned, it taking the time to go through the municipal advisory boards, I don't see that as wanting to be rushed. So again, meeting once a month, we would want to possibly have 2 or 3 meetings. And then depending on when I would say board members can meet on that, so it could be 4. So again, I think tentative dates are, I would say, put asterisks next to each one of these dates on the presentation, but again, projected timeline.
A couple things. From a fleet electrification perspective, and I think this is how we drafted the climate resolution, isn't so much about which vehicle, it's about overall fuel efficiency of the fleet. Is that still kind of your foundational? Because again, I don't want a policy that's going to force the hand on any particular vehicle or any particular, right? I want a trend line that everybody is working toward, that allows people time to transition. So your largest apparatus, right, might be at the very end. I don't want to try to control that. I don't want a future commission to try to control that. I want to make sure that we're achieving an overall trend toward the target goal. Is that the thinking that you're building into this?
Yes. Yes, I think with most of the recommendations that came from the consultants, again, they were recommendations on vehicles that we could electrify, but then again, we don't have infrastructure in place, so we can't make that happen, just like with the police chief's vehicle. We want to make sure that infrastructure is in place first, but then also, again, taking that consideration is that overall trend, nothing specific, nothing that's outlining a certain vehicle, but more of a trend towards what we're trying to accomplish.
So then the next kind of knock-on questions then become, how are we tracking this on an annual basis? Because essentially what we're asking is every vehicle does need to be tracked. The fuel efficiency of it needs to be understood, right? When new vehicles come on, those get blended in. When old ones roll off, they are taken out. So we understand this trend line over time. How do we determine what that trend line is? how do we allocate that out to departments, right? There's a lot of kind of mechanical things that I'm curious how you guys are gonna think about what that pattern looks like, so that there are some controls, right, that we can monitor and understand while also allowing the staff the flexibility to do what they deem best within their responsibilities.
I understand what you're saying about not being prescriptive about actual vehicles, right? Because we may find at a certain point that we don't need 30 vehicles in a department, we only need 20, in which case trying to assign or be prescriptive about which ones get electrified would be counterproductive.
Right.
But I do think we should be prescriptive about the policy about how we define mileage and things like that. I think we all know there's a difference between what the vehicle companies tell us is the effective
Exactly.
mileage and what the real mileage is. So
Right.
we may need to have some internal accounting, like we spent X number of dollars on fossil fuel vehicles and got so many miles, and we spent X number of dollars this year on electric
Right.
vehicles and got so many miles, and we have some sort of, weighted kind of average across the board. So, and that might be a good way to do it, but somewhere in this plan, we should have that kind of formula so that we know moving forward, and over time, it's less of one, more of another, that kind of thing.
Agreed.
Yeah, which I think fits your comment about someone's comment about the assumptions.
Yeah.
That, okay, finance board's gonna talk about this and say, well, what are we assuming?
Right.
Our miles per gallon now or whatever. Otherwise, you're really throwing darts at a dartboard.
And there are apps that do it, because I keep one for my car.
Yeah, as long as we could aggregate that.
It's boom, boom, and
You know.
it keeps the long time record and the whole thing. I'm sure you get better ones than I have, but.
You can play that out for maintenance costs as well.
Yeah, you sure
Like,
can. You can track all that stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not so hard.
Presumably, the department heads will be managing that. I don't think we need to know that, other than if we say our efficiency rating is a 9, hey, that's great, whatever the scale we determine is. That I think would be smart.
Yeah.
Both of those things would tie into total cost of ownership as well.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Sure, well, if we relate them, if we relate that efficiency to the cost at some point, sure.
I think we also got a very good baseline back in the spring of when we analyzed, or I would say pretty much collected all of the information we had on our fleet vehicles with looking at mileage each year, total mileage, daily uses. They are assumptions, whether
yeah.
it's under 50,
Right.
over 50, over
Right.
100. So I think we had a good baseline that we can build off of. But again, that's, what are we going to define? Is it mileage? Is it usage? Is it,
Mhm.
efficiency and things like that? So, but yeah.
This, one other thing I had was just from a administrative process around the advisory boards. I would hope that, and I very much appreciate that you're gonna take it to both of those boards. I think that's important to get their feedback. I would like some vote by those boards for whatever they produce. Whether they support, they don't support, whatever it is.
Or recommendation.
Yes, yeah, as opposed to just giving them just only the opportunity to just review and provide comments. Please ensure that there is some
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
formal recognition of a position on the output, whatever it might be.
I think for them to vote, they have to have something to vote on. So are we asking them to vote on the actual plan?
Not necessarily, whether it's the plan by itself, plan with their proposed, recommended changes.
Yeah.
Again,
Okay.
so long as, we as a body, before we vote, see their kind
Input.
of, the input of their deliberations in formal structure.
Because I can't help myself sitting at the table since I was partially involved with the architecture building of the new advisory boards. I could envision the financial management board's piece being a vote on, this is our recommendation on how to calculate the total cost of ownership. These are the assumptions that we're making, and
Mhm.
this is our recommended formula of how the stat, and these are the variables we think staff should plug in to this formula, and that's what we recommend. So I could see that being, not necessarily recommending the whole policy, but just a piece of the policy.
Of the
And
piece,
then
yeah.
recommending
Sure.
another piece that
Yeah.
kind of all comes together as one. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that kind of fits what I was talking about. It's just, in the end, whatever comes out of the finance board, I would hope, it's not a split decision. If we get to a point where it's, a 4-4 vote of the finance board, like, wait a minute, we have something that the group can coalesce around. In the end, if it's a split decision, that comes up to commission as well.
Yeah, as well. Yeah, then we know.
It's that
Yeah.
turnout,
Uh-huh.
they reviewed it and half think X and half think Y.
Right.
Either way, good news or bad news, it's gotta be reported on, so. They call it nitpicking or whatever. You've got for adopt, and you've got, it will be formally adopted. It's a bit presumptuous. It's like, bring a plan to have a commission vote at that time, something that, just.
I would change it will to
The
may.
same reaction.
I saw you change it on the memo. I would change it here, will to may, just, this is a public document.
What would you change it to? I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
May.
That's adopt from
Oh,
will to may.
Okay.
Something.
I mean, I know you're just putting it there as a timeline.
Yeah.
If it's adopted, it has to be, introduced, presented, whatever the legal timeline for that is, I get it.
Sure.
but-
And it's recognized that the commission
Got it.
has to adopt something for staff to move forward with.
Right,
So.
sure.
So whether it happens then or at a later meeting, and I think the other thing too, Commissioner Flynn brings up a good point about and maybe not recommending specific vehicles, because anything that staff, boards, whoever presents with this is gonna be a snapshot in time, right? Technology is continually evolving. We just had the first police pursuit rated EV vehicle get approved, but it's never been actually, tested on the road yet. It was approved by, the powers that be that ratify these things, but I think there are some departments that have ordered them on a trial basis and are gonna try them out, but there hasn't been, widespread implementation of these things yet either. So as technology evolves, I think we do want the end policy to be something broad enough that we can be adaptive to evolving technologies and things like that as well. Because, what's available right now isn't gonna be what's available in 10 years. Technology is gonna improve over the next decade. And
Well, that's actually a really interesting point you bring at the end. I mean, we don't know what the future might bring, right? It might be hydrogen. Right, well, if this is done properly, fleet fuel efficiency, right, is still a legitimate measurement. Right, where electrification, right, if measured more, in a more focused way, we might need to revamp. So again, I would think about that, right, as how do we measure the overall fleet efficiency over time? Because it's not just about electrification, it's about creating a framework within which we are understanding the effort to transition to a more efficient system.
Well, not just more efficient, but clean, because the policy is,
Good point.
we have
Good point.
determined in the policy that clean is equivalent to less carbon.
Agreed.
So if that changes, because we could have the most efficient vehicle in the world that spits out a boatload of carbon, right? And so
Fair point.
it would change our
Right.
metric. But
Agreed.
as long as we do that,
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Maybe that's one of the things the resiliency board looks at is the carbon reduction, carbon recapture. Because then you can do that on a trend line as well.
Did you have more? I just had one other. This is really more a comment for the commission, but since this is up, the timing. So, I mean, we vote on this, the CIP anyway, every year.
Right.
So I'm less worried about this. This is really more of a comment for the commission in terms of review. It's been my experience that the CIP review, while we do pull things out, is kind of perfunctory in my experience, but it's not like there's a lot of fat in the CIP.
No.
Like most of the stuff that's in there, we need and we're maintaining and we have to budget for it. It's not like Ian sneaks in a couple random things and we fund the building that nobody knew was gonna happen. But my point is, and I already sent this as an email to the commission, but I'll say it here publicly. The items that were added to the CIP, I haven't seen what you added. I'm assuming what was added was what Duquesne and Electrify Allegheny told us. We had the presentation at the Public Safety Center, the Public Works Board, right? So I'm just saying this now. If we're not going to have electric vehicles that are public works vehicles, we're not going to have electric vehicles that are police vehicles, and it would seem that we're not right now. It would be silly, in my opinion, to approve those items for those areas. Nobody's gonna park in the public works parking lot area. It's not gonna happen.
But we can't buy one if we don't have the infrastructure to charge them.
Right, but what I'm saying is,
Yes.
I understand that we need infrastructure,
Yeah.
and we're saying that the infrastructure should be there or some way be appropriated. What I'm saying is, part of this was the number of chargers at the public Safety center was based on a number, I think it was like 24 or 26, right? The reality is if we only have 4 or 5 that can actually be done, we may not need a bay of 6 superchargers at the police area.
Yeah.
We may only need 1. So if we're saying, hey, we may have more of these in the future, I would say keep the space open, but we don't have to purchase superchargers right now for something that might
Sure.
not happen for a couple of years.
Well, especially if it goes to hydrogen or something else.
Whatever it is, but I think right now we have a discrepancy between what EA says, Electrify Allegheny says we can electrify,
Right.
and what our own staff is saying we should electrify or should not. So I think we need to reconcile that before we actually add that to the CIP, because we are potentially buying and installing more chargers than we're gonna have vehicles for, even in the near future.
I guess I look at CIP as being guidelines.
Yeah.
You know, it's a target, it's a guideline, it's a structure. Just because we're gonna have a vote later in the year to say we're accepting the CIP for the next 5 years, we're not spending any money.
That's right.
We're just saying, right, it's got a goal, target, a guideline, whatever.
Mhm.
It's when it comes around to say, now we're looking at a proposal for however many charging stations, whatever. That's where the proverbial rubber meets the road.
Mhm.
Sure, I understand that.
At that point, we're gonna spend this amount, that amount, or that amount before we okay that
The
expenditure.
individual expense. I get it.
Yeah.
That, the really beginning to your point.
But this becomes a different conversation. When we get there, the conversation is, this is what we all agreed to in the CIP, therefore it should be funded at that level. And I know we always get a bite at the apple for votes, but when we're looking at a million different things and we look at the, like I said before, the CIP typically becomes a very perfunctory vote. Like, yes, we look at a few things, but it's not like we do the line item detail on it like we do in the budget.
Right,
So-
so it's that document is, hey, that's where he was for. You know, and sound like when I was your age, but with this many years in commission, CIP has always been that sort of, yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
out there. It's the
Until we vote.
target. Well, but even until we vote, we vote to accept the CIP, but really,
Right.
that's, it's budget time. It's, you know,
Right.
these specific projects each meeting we're voting, that's where it really happens.
And as we go
And that's, we
through,
have many more times to hit your point, to say, adjust it, bigger, smaller,
Mhm.
we hit it.
the CIP is really a list of projects that have been identified by staff.
Right.
That we know we need to undertake.
Right.
As we go through the budget process and I go through my recommended budget,
Mhm.
I will include certain projects from the CIP,
Mhm.
typically for that budget year that they're
Right.
identified for.
Right.
Other ones I won't, because there are other
Right.
competing needs.
Right.
As we go through that budget process, we spend one of our budget workshops, or
On the.
portion of it,
Mhm.
going through the CIP and
Mhm.
saying, hey, here's what was recommended in the manager's budget. Anybody have any changes? Anybody want to take something out, put something else in? So, again, your point's well taken, Craig. I think that the inclusion of the charging stations in the CIP is more a recognition of this is going to be out there at some point. So we try to give you a number to help from a budgeting standpoint when you decided it's the appropriate time to move
Right.
forward.
Well, yeah, I would just say that, yeah, when I'm working with agencies, on this type of thing, frankly, I'm actually looking at like 10, 15 years. Right, knowing that it's just a pure kind of, we're gonna stick a number out there really for understanding future capacity. Right, for me, that's really where the analysis is coming in. So, I mean, I think your point of like, we need to make sure we're staying on target is valid. But again, for me, the CIP is, again, I think I would agree with them, is that I'm thinking about this more as just this long-term capacity build that we need to ensure that we're providing for it.
Sure.
Which again, I think is an interesting conversation. I'd like the finance board to think about, Commissioner Silverman.
We'll have a conversation about that.
I know Ian mentioned that has been received, they're looking at it, and that will be resolved. I think the resolve warrants another analysis, and the resolve of that analysis is what would potentially go in the CIP. Because I suspect, as the chief has indicated, there is a big difference between what EA has proposed and what is reality for the foreseeable future. I want to make sure that we're not spending 100,000 on chargers
Yeah, when they're-
that are going to be used.
Right, and back to, there'll be many of those analyses that you're talking about, just, there'll be different votes for those.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, the CIP is a document put together by planning and finance collaboratively, kind of to identify, as Manager McGill mentioned, the highest priority recommendations, and to kind of, it's a 5-year time frame, but it's also to kind of scale out, is this a more immediate need that we kind of plug into year 1, year 2 to say, this is coming soon, or is it a, longer term need that goes in year 4 or 5 and say, just so the commission's aware in the future, this project's coming down the pike. So those, by charter, we had to publish the capital improvement program on August 1st. It was published. It's going to the planning board for review next week. It'll be, we'll probably do our kind of high level overview of the projects on the list for the commission, the second meeting in August that we've done the past few years.
Okay.
But I think that at the end of the day, like Manager McGill mentioned, the CIP projects get plugged into the overall budget list, and some of them wind up above the line, some of them wind up below the line. And if I'm hearing Commissioner Grelli correctly, is that his preference would be that the EV chargers be below the line until we have an adopted plan and kind of know where we need to make those investments. Even though, it may appear in the budget, and even if it's below the line, the commission all knows through budget workshops, you always have the opportunity to move something above the line to allocate on a side fund.
Exactly.
My preference would be that we assign that recommendation equivalent to the need. Whether or not it's above the line or below the line doesn't matter to me. If the manager recommends it above the line, it's above the line. My comment is, if we're gonna size a recommendation to a need, it should be sized properly. We know there's a difference between the need and the recommendation. So what I'm saying is, before we get to the point where we put something in the CIP, let's figure out what that right size is, then put it in the CIP.
I mean, I've been looking at lights at Seymour Field, I think for 8 years now, the CIP. That's a rough number for that, knowing that full well that when it finally comes back around again, you go to Gateway or whoever and say, okay, what's the cost of it? What do you expect the cost to be now? But it says, all right, it's kind of, we make sure you don't forget something we're thinking about, whatever. So I don't think get.
Although this year, I think
too
we have more
worried
data, before it was like, it was resident requests, it were a few commissioners who really pushed for that. Now we have a report that says we will add X number of hours if we light Y fields. So I think we have data that says, or at least gives us a little bit more fuel to say, we can maybe put a better number to that now. If we spend 400,000 on lights, we get another 700 hours of playable field time. That's a number that we could say, okay, we've got a good analysis. Whereas before it was more like, we have people who play on the field who wish that they could play for longer, but we maybe didn't have that number.
But those are really two different questions. One is there's some interest, let's kind of put safeties here. Later is exactly the analysis you're talking about when the commissioner gets down to it and says, oh, based on this, we want to do X or whatever.
Yeah.
And we will.
We also
Yeah,
know
those
the
are-
technology for lighting has changed over 8 years. So
Yes.
what was recommended 8 years ago is probably not what's recommended now. Therefore, the prices change, which is why it's a plan that we then add and subtract things to until we get it.
But I mean, look, even with the lighting, that's something that we'll be looking at this budget season. I mean, we had a pretty straightforward report from the sports board, which is now the Parks and Rec board.
Yeah, we also try to time a lot of our capital improvement projects so that if there are overlapping projects, and Seymour Field's a good example, right? It would make sense to look at lighting, adding additional lighting at the time that you are going to returf that field.
Exactly.
Because you will already have been disturbing the surface, you'll be able to get it in, install the conduits that you need to put lights where they're no longer, they don't currently exist. And also at the same time, potentially look at the expansion of that parking area that serves
Yep.
those fields. So we try to group
Together.
CIP projects
Sure.
to get some efficiencies there. And also avoid somebody going, well, you just did the lights last year, why are you tearing the field up now? And there's nowhere to park.
Gas company. Let's blame it on the gas company. All right, any other points, concerns, questions for Mr. Wharton and Mr. McMeans?
Questions from the commission?
All right.
You have 24 minutes.
I know it.
Start with others.
I know.
Maybe the chief would like to talk to us about a few. You still purposely ignoring.
You only have that farewell be over. be done by 8 o'clock.
You know, since Robin is here, Robin, I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry. But do you have any updates on what the architect was looking at for you guys? Where are you in the process?
She's not sorry, by the way.
I just wondered where she is in the process. I couldn't go the last meeting. I was on vacation. So I probably missed where they are in the process.
It hasn't been going very quickly at all. I think they have a couple of other really big projects they're
Okay.
working on, but we are meeting with them next week, so I'll send you an update.
Okay, cool. Great. Thanks. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No worries.
You do have the boards and authorities.
I know, but I didn't go, so that was my boards and authority right there.
I was actually, I was putting that out for the rest of the group, but
Well, the oft-mentioned finance board is due to meet tomorrow night, so there we are.
Oh, okay. Well, what have you been talking about since then? Anything?
We did not have a meeting last month.
Gosh, slackers. All right. How about resiliency?
Kind of the same, so. True. We've met and didn't quite have a path set before, so there was some trickiness. I mean, that's, as Andrew's mentioned, or Commissioner Flynn has mentioned, that's the Frankenstein board. So last time we got together, there was a number of discussions about what exactly do we want to do. So we took a break and actually met this morning with some of the members of that board and are kind of plotting out what it is that they'll work on. So we'll be back in September and have everything figured out.
Right.
But
and there is that section from the comprehensive plan that tried to
Yes, you can
lay out a general
Yeah.
outline for
What to do.
focus for the
Yeah.
boards.
yeah.
Yeah.
If I can throw out something just for consideration, I'm not looking for
Sure.
yes, no, whatever, just doodle on. That I know we talked about with the new board structure of changing every year, saying changing commission
Yes.
liaison every year.
Mhm.
And my suggestion to the group is at least for 24, let's actually have the same liaisons in 2025 as 2024. Just because we started kind of mid-year, it's taken time to get up to speed. I feel like once we get to the end of the year, we kind of start to get rolling, then we kind of rearrange the chairs again. So that's just my suggestion to the group is say at least, keep the same liaisons in place, at least for a second year. I'm not saying that way for forever, but I just feel like let's build on that efficiency.
Second that, because I don't want to be on the finance board.
Is that-
I second that because I don't want to be on the finance.
I was hoping you'd just say it was a brilliant idea and leave it at that.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Don't throw any of the boards under the table. Not a good
No,
look.
it's not that board, it's me.
Ah,
There was just sort of match. I get it, certainly you want to match skill sets with.
Yeah, you know
Right,
what they
and mine
say.
don't match with that.
Follow the money. Always follow the money.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Mr. Grella? Parks and Rec?
Some of the staff, Parks and Rec, I have a school board update.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Some of the staff are back this week. School starts next week, Tuesday, which is, I think, the 20th. And regular meetings for myself and the liaison will start again. So that I'll have updates, as we continue on
Okay.
after next week.
Great.
Anything Parks and Rec?
No, I didn't attend the last meeting. Future meetings, I'll be at on vacation on this one.
Andrew?
Mobility is getting established, right, as we've been discussing. I think they are on a very healthy path. They've already had a resident bring forward a proposal for a tactical urbanism policy, which would, the idea being is that, have the municipality allow for like painting or putting in planters or other types of traffic calming measures that are.
You'll say hey.
Yeah, conceptually, right? I mean, there's all kinds of solutions, so but obviously, we're not going to allow people to just randomly throw things on our streets. So, what would a policy be that would, allow for that? So that a resident brought that forward, they are looking at that. And thinking about that as a potential item to bring forward to commission. They have they've established a policy subcommittee, standing policy subcommittee and a standing capital.
Wow.
They are looking at the sidewalks that were on our short list to recommend to prioritize them, the ones that we already had identified, but how do we prioritize them? Like I said, they're chomping at the bit, they're doing lots of stuff, and good, healthy path forward. The other thing I would
It
note.
has always been.
Can you send me the date of the next one? I wanna come by and chat. I've had additional conversations with some of the residents, not all. I haven't spoken to all of them yet, but I've spoken to some of the residents along Country Club Drive, which is one of the proposed sidewalks about making that a one-way
Mhm.
and having room so that we don't have to go into residents' yards to put sidewalks. And the response has been good, even better than last time we chatted about. I actually haven't had a single person who said, no, that's a bad idea.
Wow.
So again, I haven't spoken to everybody, but I've spoken to a bunch of them. So not a majority yet, but getting there.
Okay.
So that might make that project, I don't know if it changes the cost, it might. But it might be an interesting
Yeah.
thing too.
Thing to consider. Yeah, no, I will definitely send that to you. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd love to have that conversation. Speaking of, they are, well, maybe not part of mobility specifically, but we did have a conversation about, scrubgrass.
Yeah,
With the residents. So that is going on. That process has begun. We had 3 mobility board members attend, right, just as, listening. But, well, not just listening, they contributed into the discussion. But Mr. Haberman of Gateway, facilitated that process. It went really well. Had some interesting ideas, I think, that, we're waiting now for Mr. Haberman to come back with suggestions, that will come back to the mobility board, for review. And again, before a recommendation would come to commission, it will go through the mobility board. So they have that going on. There was another thing, but it totally disappeared. Connect is busy as always, as you all have heard, between Electrify Allegheny, the fleet electrification work they are doing, the solar work that they are doing. Connect as an organization is getting, really established as its own 501(c)(3). So that has kept me busy trying to just get the administrative pieces all established. As an organization, make sure the executive director is confident that the organization is moving forward, but they are doing good work, and looking forward to a very productive legislative session. So I will send you all that information. Hopefully, some of you can attend. It's always a big event for all the municipalities to get together and talk about key issues that we want to focus on as a region.
outstanding.
The board is due to meet next week. Excuse me, it's been pretty quiet just because of, with interest rates, there's not a whole lot of projects.
Right,
We do have a
Right.
lot line consolidation, and then we also have the board will review the CIP. And again,
Okay.
that's next
Good.
Tuesday.
civic engagement met last week. They are going to be bringing something, I think it's September.
First meeting in
September discussion session on becoming a welcoming city. It's a certification program and they will let you all know what it involves, whether we want to do it or not.
So we come to discussions.
Yeah, come to a discussion session, and present.
Great.
We can decide thumbs up, thumbs down
Cool.
with permutations, as they say. Mirza, you have
Uh,
updates?
They hired the admin.
In person,
on,
yep.
And they
It's
hired
key.
someone new,
Mhm,
and she started the first,
mhm,
I think, 2 days this week, then she'll be full-time starting
Mhm.
Monday.
mhm.
So,
They seem to be okay. Yes.
yes,
All right.
settled.
Speaking of, sorry to put you on the spot, Chief Haberman, where are we at with the social worker?
Actually, we had our second interview today. We gave a conditional offer. We're right now planning for a mid-September to late September start time. We have a training plan outlined. We have, really, it's gonna be pretty comprehensive in terms of the overall training of the social worker or social services coordinator for the municipal entities. And then also the operational piece and so we're really excited about her. She's a fantastic candidate, really come to us with a lot of really solid, appropriate background.
Mhm.
And really, that'll really come on board as a immediate subject matter expert and the things that we're looking for. So we couldn't really be happier with how the process turned out.
All right.
Thank you.
The chief and I discussed potentially having her come to, maybe an early meeting, maybe the second meeting in September, just so you can put a face to a name and, again, they're still developing the program. Bring her back maybe next year, early in the year to see how things have progressed and where we are and what we've developed and what we've learned. So, again, I sat in on this second interview today and, I think she has all of the requisite skill sets that will enable her to be very successful in the position. And again, will give us another resource that we currently don't have. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, excellent.
Outreach is in their summer recess,
Ah,
take summers off, for, the board.
yeah.
So they will
You're
not
looking
do
for a
anything
new
until
executive director?
September. They're setting up a committee to look for a new executive director. I've said, look at my background, I'm happy to help with some HR stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Having been through it a few times, so yeah. And so anyway, so offering some advice and saying,
Glutton for punishment. In
Yeah,
other words,
what
we
can I
got
tell
it.
so, yeah, what can I tell you? And let's see, Historical Society is going to have their annual fundraising
Yes,
event in
yes.
September.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't remember the date. I think it's September 25th. I'm not sure. But they have an event coming up. Once I get a specific date, I'll let the group know. But again, it is
Yeah.
in September
And it's fun,
this year. Yes.
definitely fun. Good thing to go to. All right, thanks, everyone. We'll go to the commission meeting. See.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually.
I just.
Yeah, I can see that. You ran real quick.